My former boss, Australia's 28th Prime Minister, is many things but homophobic and misogynistic. Well, they're not among them. This needs to be said because more than a year after he left the Australian Parliament, Tony Abbott still, it seems, is able to provoke some sort of derangement syndrome amongst people on the political left, not just here, but overseas as well. Unsourced reports in London newspapers that would have him appointed to the British Board of Trade to help facilitate the free trade deals that Britain needs to have as it leaves the European Union prompted extraordinary sprays, not just from the Labor Party here, but the British Shadow Foreign Secretary and even the First Minister of Scotland. But of course, many of them were on the other side of the Brexit debate. They'd happily see a post-EU Britain fail. Maybe that's in part why they don't want someone with Abbott's trade record doing anything to help. After all, he drove the finalisation of our three big trade deals, China, Japan, Korea, deals that had languished with other governments and on public service desks for a decade or more. Deals that now represent around 50% of Australia's exports. All the while, they were taking a backward step on our national interest, I might add, never kowtowing to China's communists or anyone else. But the readiness of politicians to heap political scorn on people for faults they don't have, well, I reckon it's one of the reasons most voters find politics repellent. Now, as you know, I worked as Abbott's Chief of Staff for 6 years. Before me, it was another woman as well. Indeed, over the 25 years he was in the federal parliament, he only ever had female chiefs of staff. He's a bloke too, as you know, with 3 sisters, a very independent wife, 3 much-loved adult daughters. That speech from the former Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, that some in Britain have been trotting out as evidence of his so-called misogynistic crimes, well, let me remind you, I was there in the chamber when it happened. This was a speech on a motion condemning her turncoat speaker for unspeakable comments about the genitals of women and worse. But Gillard didn't sack her own speaker for what he said, so that she has no principle that she wouldn't have sold out to stay in office at the time. So instead, she turned her defence of her speaker into an attack on Abbott. But it wasn't long thereafter, was it, that her own colleagues turned on her. A misogynist, well, you've all had a good look at me for the last 2.5 bit years now that I've hosted this program. You reckon I'm the sort of woman that would work for a man who hated women? Or I'm the sort of woman that a bloke who hated women would hire in the first place? And a homophobe. That's the other slur thrown around overnight from the left as well. Tony Abbott counted as one of his very dearest, closest friends, the late Christopher Pearson, whom he spoke to nearly every day from the first moment he entered Parliament right through to becoming Prime Minister when Christopher passed away. It never mattered to Abbott that Pearson was gay. He was one of his dearest mates. Kate McGregor, former Army officer, you know her here on Sky as a terrific commentator. When Kate made the decision to transition from Malcolm, who Abbott had known for decades, one of the first people that Kate told her decision to was Abbott. And I also know many of our office staff who were gay. They found these sorts of attacks disgusting and low. The worst of the worst in politics. And this today from his own sister. She said it's nothing short of dishonesty for politicians who do not know Tony to label him as a homophobe and a misogynist for the purposes of scoring cheap political points. As a woman who has always been a part of his life and who came out to him as gay in my early 40s, I know incontrovertibly that Tony is neither of those things. In reality, he is a man of great conviction and intellect, an unabashed conservative, but with great compassion, respect for others, and an indelible sense of doing what's right. Tony would be an outstanding trade envoy for the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Scott Morrison was dead right the other day when he said of Abbott's reported trade appointment that it was a good hire, because I can't think of anyone who's better at making a case, driving an agenda and getting things done. The carbon tax, gone. The 50,000 illegal arrivals by sea, stopped. Maybe this is what's really behind the hysterical and ignorant criticism from Britain's left this week. To my mind, the only people who really look low and unworthy out of all of this are the people throwing those slurs around.